Hi, everybody.
Hi there. Peace and blessings.
Good to see all of your names and some of your faces. It's been a while. All right. Well, we'll go ahead and get started. I know some people are going to continue to join, I think, as we keep going. On behalf of the Project on the History of Black Writing, I'd like to welcome you all to the Black Book Interactive Project Scholars Program Webinar Series. My name is Sarah Arbuthnot-Lent, and I'm the BBIP Scholar Program Coordinator. Thanks for joining us today. I want to introduce first Dr. Kenton Ramsey. Dr. Ramsey is Professor of African American Literature and Digital Humanities at the University of Texas at Arlington. His 100 Novels Project, which if you've been with us with BBIP for a while, you've heard us talk about. He started that when he was a PhD student here at KU, and that is what launched the Black Book Interactive Project. He's currently one of our BBIP consultants, and he's on the HBW advisory board as well. So I'll turn it over to you, Kenton, to introduce our speaker today.
Okay, thanks, Sarah, for the introduction and what's going on, everybody. I hope you all are healthy and safe during this global pandemic that we are experiencing right now. Today, I have the distinct pleasure to introduce to you somebody who has been very, very important to my professional development. Over the past 5 years, it's interesting, you know, you get your college advisors, then you get your graduate school advisors, and then you realize you just have this entire kind of network, hopefully, that it develops, as developed for me. And Dr. Marilyn Thomas Houston has definitely been an integral and vital part of this network with dealing with publishing, which you all will hear about today. I'm about to read her biography now. Marilyn Miller Thomas Houston, a multidisciplinary trained scholar with a 1997 PhD in anthropology from NYU, is Associate Professor Emeritus of the University of Florida. She is also the visiting digital humanities scholar and outreach coordinator for the Mellon-funded Publishing Without Walls initiative for the Department of African American Studies at the University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign. Thomas Houston is director, producer of several ethnographic, films on Black life and history. Her 2 DVD series, From These Roots, features the life and work of Nova Scotia's Black basket maker, Clara Goff. She is the author of Stoney, The Road to Change Black Mississippian Culture of Social Relations, senior editor of Homing Devices, the Poor as Targets of Public Housing and Practice, editor of the special issue of International Journey of Africana Studies, Sustaining Black Studies in the 21st Century, and co-founding editor of FIRE, the Multimedia Journal of Black Studies. Much of Thomas Houston's works incorporates exchange of knowledge across social and cultural boundaries. Therefore, her efforts have included bringing exhibits of African Canadian history and culture to the United States, as well as taking African American scholars from institutions in the US to Nova Scotia for her Black Studies Beyond February projects. Again, as I said, you are really in for a treat because Dr. Marilyn Thomas Houston really helped me in talking about digital publishing, which you'll hear about today. So please take notes because she will really help you with this process. Thanks. And turn it over to
you. Thank you, Kenton and Sarah. I'm sorry for all those run-on sentences, Kenton, that I have in that bio. Didn't realize how run-on they were until you started reading them. Hi, everyone. Can't hear, that's right.
Hi, how are you?
Hi, how are you?
Hey, Dr. Bailey. I was thinking when I was preparing for this seminar that bios don't always give a full picture, particularly of relationships, and Kenton just sort of must have read my mind. He must have been in my head when I was thinking of this, because relationships are really important. And I want this workshop to not just be about learning about Afro-PWW, but also about establishing relationships. So I'd like to first introduce to you Alex Dryden, who is our technical guru and all around nice guy. And there's Marilyn, our other technical support whiz, who has just joined our digital publishing team. Both of them are going to hang around just in case you have any questions. For today, Alex is going to help with any technical issues we encounter in logging in. I'm sure you all know that when you're dealing with technology, there is always a problem and nothing does not run smooth. There's always something wrong. And I've already had those problems already this morning. The tech support people already know about them. Anyway, Alex is going to assist us with getting you logged into the platforms. Can I see a show of hands of those of you who are already logged in to Pressbooks?
I don't have a hands tool, but I had a little thumbs up that
I see it. That's good.
Thumbs up.
I'll take a thumbs up. Like that, Conrad. So, not everybody's logged in. Alex.
Yeah.
Would you help them get logged in?
Yeah, so everyone, I got a list of people to make logins for. So everyone on that list should have gotten an email. If you didn't get an email with any login information, if you just go ahead and send me a chat with your email and name you'd like, then I'll go ahead and get you set up in Pressbooks, Marilyn.
Yes, we'll start with Pressbooks, yes.
Okay.
But we're going to go through each one of the platforms first and get them all logged in on separate windows for their browser.
Okay. Sorry, had to get myself unmuted. So the 4 people who just messaged me, I added you to Pressbooks, and the way that login works, it'll just send you an email, and then it'll either generate a password for you, or you'll generate one yourself. But for all of the systems except for Scalar, it's a user self-generated password. Scalar is a little bit funny, and it asks me to make a password for you when I generate your user credentials, and then doesn't send you an email. So for Scalar, the password that I used was just BBIP 2020. So that'll be the password you use along with your email to first log into Scalar. And I got those ones added. Ashley, let me make sure I got this correct. A. Simmons, I think that you already have a login on Pressbooks, so you might just check your email, maybe your spam filter, and see if it's in there.
Yeah, I just searched it again and found it.
Okay, cool, great. Okay, so I got the 3 others then added into Pressbooks. So everyone now, at least I've got messages from before I switched over, should be getting an email now or soon. And I'll get those other 3 added to the other systems, Marilyn, while you start walking through Pressbooks, or do you want me to do that all right now?
Yeah, let's get them all logged in.
Okay. Well, I'll go ahead and do Scalar next then.
So before I actually begin the discussions on the value and purpose of Afro-PWW, I did want to take a few minutes to explain how my work as a scholar of the Black experience uses technology to enhance the understandings of the Black experience. And my history and BBIP and Afro-PWW have interconnected histories. We didn't just come together here in the 21st century when Afro-PWW became a project out of the University of Illinois. But in actuality, Dr. Graham's work coming out of the history of Black writing, and Dr. Bailey's work on the Civil Rights Research and Documentation Project all began at the University of Mississippi, where I was a student at the time. And that's where I got to meet them. And we're talking about establishing relationships. This relationship has lasted across that time and space. Dr. Bailey's work as it related to teaching the importance of researching and documenting the Black experience, and Dr. Graham, who introduced me to Black female authors, are important mentors in my growth and development that has led to my interest in work in digital research and publishing. Her introduction to my being introduced to Zora Neale Hurston in particular had an impact on my future. It was her infusion of anthropological tropes into her writing and documentation influenced my decision to become an anthropologist. And I've used that to study the Black experience. So I consider myself more of a Black studies scholar than a the anthropologist who studies the African American experience. Encouraged by Dr. Graham's interest in storytellers and Dr. Bailey's documenting Black life and culture in video, and Hurston's thick description approach to making her research palatable for the general public, I added the use of technology to my curriculum of study as I worked on my PhD, incorporating it into every aspect of my studies, my research, and presentations that I did. In fact, I think just about every paper that I wrote, I had some connection to digital and technology associated with that. So through the decades, our paths continued to cross, working together in various capacities that have now led to Dr. Graham's support and membership as an Afro-PWW advisory committee member, and Dr. Bailey's idea of how two projects can build from the successes of each in a collaborative arrangement. So as our paths just continued to cross, technology continued to advance, and the devices became more affordable. Daryl Michael Scott and I conceived of FIRE as a journal that would allow scholars whose research was intricately tied to digital and digitized evidence. We were hoping that it would have become a reputable space where scholars could publish. And I'll talk more about the journal later. But let's take a brief look at the value of digital publications, open access ones and traditional publications in general. That is, if everybody is logged in to the sites right now. My talk today focuses on the significance of digital open access publications. And I named why consider Afro-PWW as a publishing outlet. So, as more and more people became obsessed with access to the internet and devices for accessing the World Wide Web, that accessing became more affordable, and newspapers, retailers, and software developers helped catapult it into the world that became the information age. And the production of information for the web became an industry, and the term global became popularized. Everyone with access and minor skills could be a voice heard around the world. But as always in our world where capitalism dominates, access to consuming and producing became more limited as these same producers of information began to charge for access to their knowledge or their data. And the area of knowledge production, it boiled down to the haves, as Dr. Graham referred to them, making decisions about what knowledge gets produced for the have-nots. So we have this digital age taking place, but many are limited in terms of their ability to share their knowledge on a grand scale for a number of access reasons. So like traditional publications, but to a much lesser degree, web publications limited who had access to both the consumption of knowledge and its production. So the idea of creating equity for the have-nots led to this concept of open access. Unfortunately, as my friend Dr. Scott liked to say, free is not a business model. Therefore, even in this concept of bridging the digital divide, knowledge production gap that we were facing, access was limited still to those considered competitive enough to obtain funding to make their knowledge available to large-scale audiences. So let's focus more now specifically on Afro-PWW. The overall goal of the project was twofold. One, provide the skills, knowledge, and support needed for individuals to be able to conceive of their work as digital publications while providing them with an outlet for publishing, all free to them and to the potential consumers of their knowledge. And second, was to provide enough proficiency in the tools that participants would be able to take that knowledge back to their own universities and implement similar training and publication programs. But even Afro-PWW has had access limitations. However, we'll save that story for another talk. Hopefully I'll get invited back to do. At the same time, we were pretty much successful at the first part, but required more time and funding for the second part, which we are currently seeking funds for to implement on a larger scale today. And that brings me to what we were successful at. Successful enough to be awarded the best open access model of digital publishing in 2019. And that's thanks to the work of people like Kenton Ramsey. So thank you, Kenton, our first author to publish with us. He tested out those platforms that we had. So if you find any problems with them, let's blame it on Kenton, okay? Not on Afro-PWW. Anyway, let's move on to the part that I'm assuming you are more interested in, and that's, what does Afro-PWW have to offer you? This is where I introduce the fact that you will experience now my first technical problem. For some reason, access to PowerPoints now require a different kind of login than I have. I don't know when it changed, but I worked on the PowerPoint for this presentation on my laptop, and it will not allow me to save, send, or do anything. So we will not have a presentation officially to talk about this, and I'm going to try something like trying to share my screen with you on some of the things that I think you just need to see in order to copy down what I'm saying. So in addition to learning how to create publications in the platforms, You are provided technical, design, and editorial support through consultations as long as you work on the project. The process of peer review is valuable for your development as a digital publication author and for your promotion in whatever field you may choose to enter. The tools that PWW has selected allow scholars opportunities to design and create a variety of digital publication types, such as monographs and edited volumes, article-length narratives, or entire journals. It allows you to create exhibits, databases, and content for hosting. And projects that support platforms, interaction, and multimedia data. Now, we are only going to take a more extensive look at 3 of the 4 platforms supported by PWW project. I want to explain the similarities, differences, and affordances of each. The workbook you received, everybody received the workbook, I'm assuming. Fantastic. Did anybody try any of the platforms? Nod your head if you did, those of you who I see. No, that's okay. You didn't need to. Anyway, the workbook you received was for Pressbooks, Scalar, and Omeka, the platforms that require only an author for publication, although they can facilitate collaboration, peer review, and multi-contributors. And before we end today, I will share the manual for OJS, Open Journal Systems, the platform specifically designed for short form journal publications, and talk a bit about Afro-PWW's collaborative efforts with FIRE, the Multimedia Journal of Black Studies. Sarah, is that large enough for people to read the?
Yeah, that looks great.
Okay, great. So, Pressbooks. Now, it doesn't have all the bells and whistles of Scalar and Omeka, but it's still, I think I just put something in front of it, didn't I? But it's still a powerful tool. So let's look at it. It's in column, the second column there. In terms of a learning curve, it's low to medium. And its publication primarily type is for text. But it does allow you, and I'll show you when we go through, when we take a look at Pressbooks example, it does allow you to embed video and audio. Of course, images are able to be embedded in all of the platforms that we have. In terms of drawbacks, it has a limited number of typefaces and templates and can only incorporate limited media. Although, correct me if I'm wrong, Alex, you can create a style sheet that can offset some of the regular things that come in Pressbooks.
Yeah, you can create separate style sheets for like a PDF export or for the web, totally.
So for those of you who are more advanced in your understanding about producing web pages, etc., you'll be able to do more with Pressbooks. But again, just the regular Pressbooks provides that, and I will show you an example of the Black Studies Pressbook. So this is what your viewers would see without the admin screen that you see up there. It's because she has the admin screen that she's able to do more in the site than your reader would see. And if you would scroll through this, this is what your text would look like. This is a conversation that took place at the Ford Foundation, a convening that took place at the Ford Foundation. Hold right there for a moment, please. That took place at the Ford Foundation on the future of Black studies. And what we did was videotape the 2-day convening, had people present papers and have a conversation based on the papers that they presented. This is what you begin your work in. Generally, you would want to first import all of your images, data, etc., that you are wanting to publish into the system. And once you bring that in under the media there and the library. Right. Can we scroll it a little bit so they can see the extent of how much is in there? So that's not a lot of images, and it doesn't take a lot of work to import these images in, or the video. And there are two kinds of ways that Pressbooks allows video to be embedded in there. If you have a YouTube video of your own that you're using, go back to where we are importing, where we are working in the dashboard. Don't do a new one, go back to the same one we had. So what was done here was simply a copy from a Word document and pasted into the platform here.
There are many conversations about the vocabulary of technical languages and much resistance to the kind of hostile and combative language that is embedded in coding. So you've just seen one example of it.
So bring that up. And what was done here was simply copying and pasting the URL for the video in this document there, and then automatically pressed up. It actually provides the video embedded within. So OJ, let's skip over OJS since that's going to be the last thing that we talk about. Omeka. Omeka has a high learning curve. And its primary content is going to be text and media. It's really not good for long form publications, but you can produce short form publications in Omeka. And it's going to be working in it is going to be similar to like working in a word processing application as well. Its strengths are the online exhibitions that are best suited for text and images that you can produce. Some of the drawbacks are its rigid structure. There are going to be some preservation challenges. I haven't run into those challenges thus far with the publication that we have. But it also has limited site design without you having advanced web design skills. So let me give you the link for the Omeka. So with Omeka, here's what I did. With that same iBlack Studies project that you saw in Pressbooks, where you saw clips from the 2 days of video conversations, discussions that were going on, I turned them into this database where now researchers are able to go in and listen to the entire day. Listen to all of the subjects that the participants are discussing. And the unique thing about what has been done by PWW now is that, are you able to, some of this print looks very small to me. I don't know about to you guys. Can I get a nod, a yes or a no from someone as to whether you can see what she's referring to?
Yeah, we can see it fine.
Okay. So what you see here are the various photos. These are the photos of the participants that have been entered here. And with Omeka, it's a lot more work than with Pressbooks. With Omeka, you are going to have to create items and item sets and provide a lot of metadata for your media that's in there. Of course, the amount of metadata that you include is up to you because you can select how much information you're going to provide. Omeka sort of assumes that all of the material that you are inputting in it, that you have the rights to that material. And so you can make a decision about how much information you want to put into the metadata or not. And it'll allow you can go back in and increase it if you'd like. The more you understand how it becomes searchable on the internet and what kinds of terminology, etc., would make your material more accessible in a search online. So can we go to a page? Let's go to the page where the videos are located. So this is something unique to our site now. We moved, remember I'd mentioned before about having a YouTube site. Well, all of my video was originally on a YouTube private site, but YouTube private does not mean that other people's video does not end up being able to be seen. And so when someone would click on a video for the iBlack Studies material, any other thing after it finished playing might pop up as a choice for for the viewer to then click on. And sometimes it was not something suitable for a person looking to study or learn more about the field of Black studies. In fact, it's not suitable for most people to see at all. There are some sites that are just not, and those videos were coming up. So what happened, our tech support decided we could move those videos out of YouTube and bring them into our on platform in at the University of Illinois. I think it's through the library. Is that right, Mary or Alex, either one? Is the site through the library, our media space?
Yes, so Media Space is one of the repositories that we have at the University of Illinois for media material. It's as part of the conversation about uploading material to Media Space, we make sure that we have the right to maintain a copy of it. So it's all done with the consent and of the person who wants to make that material more or make that material available. And the reason why we do this is that it is beyond the reasons that Marilyn just mentioned. It's ad-free, which is wonderful, but it also means that Illinois can maintain it, so you won't have a case where you've linked to a YouTube video and then the user removes that video and now your site has a broken link.
So scroll down just a little bit so they can see what the topic is. So it says here, key Black Studies scholars discuss the question, what is or should be the relationship between Black studies and critical race studies, diaspora studies, African studies, Afro-Latino, I should now be Latinx studies, and Africana women's studies. And if you will notice that this was question 2, but related topics are also to that subject of the question 2 can be found in question 3, question 1, and wherever else. And that's the unique thing about using this particular software, because now you have an opportunity to find other places within the entire almost 10 hours of video where that particular topic can be discussed. So this is combining media space with Omeka to create a searchable database on particular subjects. So you're able to type it in Omeka, it'll bring up the videos, clips that are located within the site. You can click on that video and then you'll have additional options for a discussion on that particular same issue. All right, Scalar, which I'm sure because of Kenton, everybody wants to publish in Scalar. We have there a medium to high learning curve. And I was so glad that Kenton had already had experience in publishing and using digital publishing tools. So it was a lot easier to work with him from scratch as our first author to publish in Scalar. And he helped us work out many of the bugs and problems that we had in showing people how to publish, how to present their work in Scalar. Its primary content, as it says here, is media and text. But you can expand that beyond audio and visual to many of the kinds of additional plugins that can use, like Tableau and ArcGIS. Mary, can you think of some additional plugins that would work with Scalar that would help our scholars that we're working with now?
Sure. So with Scalar, if you are wanting to show objects or photographs and situate them on a map, Scalar has a built-in mapping tool that when you add media and you add coordinates to that media, that Scalar will display a map that has your photos, your images, your videos pinned on it. Scalar also can do this with time information, so it can build timelines of media and photos. If you are more interested in, say, having points on a map that have text and images, what you can do is add things like an Esri story map or timeline.js or timeline or story maps.js built by the Knight Foundation. You can embed those as an iframe in Scalar.
So OJS is a little bit more complicated because it requires more than one person to operate that platform. OJS actually works just like a journal production. You have your author, you have the various editorial staff positions that must work in that platform. You have access for reviewers, copy editors. All of those people have access to the OJS, and they would have to learn how to function within it, which is pretty simple, but it's just a matter of OJS. If you don't like email, OJS is not a good thing to use, because everything that you do, you're gonna get an email for every action you do, every action that an individual on the project does. But it means that everybody knows when it's time for them to perform their task. So it is a platform that can be used to produce more standard type journals, and they can be exported as well. I didn't mention that with Pressbooks, but Pressbooks can also be exported as an EPUB, PDF, for various other kinds of publications. So I didn't mention that before, but that's what can happen with OJS. It can be the digital version can be turned into a PDF version that can be exported. What was done with PWW was something different, because it's limited also in the kind of look that's presented. PWW, Mary, which journal is that you start out in OJS and then you move to Scalar?
That would be Source Lab, which is in part a collaboration with the history department at the University of Illinois.
So we won't go through it, but can you insert that link for them so that they would have an opportunity to explore a different way of producing a journal by using OJS as the base, but the actual publications housed in Scalar?
Absolutely. Link coming momentarily.
Thank you so much. Okay, so you've heard the pros and cons and seen some of the front end and back end of the journals of the platforms that you have the opportunity to work in. Now it's time for you to sort of express to us how you see any of these platforms or the possibilities of doing digital publishing work with your own publication. And I guess the best way to do it is for when you're ready to share your idea, to type it in then, and Sarah, you'll give that person the opportunity to speak.
Yeah, that's fine. We could also people could just jump in.
Okay.
They have the ability to just unmute yourself when you're ready to share.
Okay, well, that sounds good. So who's ready? So what I'd like for you to do is tell us about the project that you're going to be working with BBIP, and then share some idea of how you think Afro-PWW platforms might be able to facilitate what you're doing.
I'll go ahead and let someone else start if I heard a different voice.
It's Kimberly. You can go, Tabitha, if you like.
Well, I was just going to jump in and go first because I feel like my answer is going to be different than everyone else's, because I feel like I am still definitely learning. So I'm coming from a background, I'm currently a professor at a local college here, and I teach African American literature, but I do not have much experience with digital humanities. So I feel like I have a very large learning curve in terms of this topic. So I'm still trying to take all this wonderful information and resources and figure out how they can parallel some of the things I'm working on. So I'm super excited to hear what other people are thinking. I know me personally, some things I'm working on right now, not that they necessarily parallel exactly what BBIP is doing, but I'm focusing on some presentations. I have one coming up at Ohio State University soon, where I'm talking about the history of redlining and how it directly affects the type of students that we're seeing in our colleges and whatnot, and trying to kind of continue to push the narrative about how we need to be studying our authors of color and this sort of thing. So I'm still, with that said, I'm still trying to figure out best ways that my research can tie into some of these different platforms. I see so many possibilities, but I feel like I'm still trying to figure out the avenue I'm kind of moving towards. So yeah, I think my answer is probably so different, but I wanted to note that, just thank you so much for this wonderful stuff. I mean, the work is amazing, and I'm so excited to hear what other people are doing, because I think it can help me continue to explore what I might be able to bring to some of this.
Wonderful. Crystal?
Oh, hi. I do think someone else wanted to go, but I don't want to jump over anybody. No? Okay. So Tabitha, I don't think I'm all that different than than you. I'm currently working on a book where I'm thinking about the use of pleasure in African American women's literature from the post-emancipation period through the early 20th century, and how they articulate pleasure as a citizenship right. And what I've never really been able to do, aside from some of the books I just happen to know, it's like, how is pleasure used across this body of literature in this period, in women's writing and in African American men's writing largely, so I can delineate all of the uses of pleasure and desire. And using the BBIP data set allows me to kind of just do a lot of searches and find all the different ways that pleasure is mentioned, and kind of I'm thinking about delineating or categorizing the different usages of the term, and in which ways pleasure is illustrative of freedom dreaming and citizenship, or in which ways is pleasure more so like being pushed against, right? Or in which ways do I see this working across a kind of broader body of text? So that's what the database is allowing me to do. Now, what that will look like, I'm not quite sure. So that today's really helpful, because I'm like, okay, there's a lot of different ways I can think about presenting this, but I'm still organizing what all this might look like. Thank you.
Yeah, I love the project. It sounds wonderful. Both of you have interesting ideas there, and I certainly see how several of our platforms could actually serve your needs. And you might think of them in terms of doing a multimodal project, because that's what happened with the iBlock studies issue. There was too much text to just do a scalar book, and then there was the amount of video and images that were important to people understanding who these scholars were that were providing this understanding. And so that was the other reason to then add Omeka into it. So Scalar just became the home site that then you branched out to book versions of what Black Studies is, video of discussions about it, etc. So I could see that working with both of the projects that you both mentioned. Someone else?
I'll go. I'm just going to read straight from my reflection that I turned in. So the author that I've chosen to work with is Narina Brooks Easterlin. The objectives for this project: to identify key priorities and barriers about her work as a Caucasian writer dealing with African American history. In addition, provide a comprehensive timeline about her life from a genealogical perspective. Second objective, to document, archive, and develop a creative research platform that introduces her work to a wider audience through playwright diagramming, a virtual readers theater, and virtual theater play map. The research design. The premise behind this research design will be to document and retrieve as much that can be found about the author's life and her reasons for writing about Black people, in particular with regard to her first theatric contribution during the rise of the Civil Rights Movement. In like manner, this research design will provide a comprehensive look at 2 of her novels available in the BPIB database. So, as it pertains to Narina Brooks Easterland, when I did a keyword search, I just typed in plays, and she came up. And so, of course, at first I thought she was of African-American descent. So being a librarian archivist, I was like, okay, you know, you still got to do a little more research. So I did a general genealogy search, came to find that she was Caucasian. I was like, okay, this will be my first time having the opportunity to work with a Caucasian writers, just everything that she's done pretty much. And I think it's a good thing, being that she was born in Ohio, moved to Mississippi, lived in Mississippi the majority of her life. Thinking about Mississippi and Mississippi's history, and just I think that for myself, this is going to be a big challenge, being that I mainly focus on Black literature. So it's taking me outside of my familiar space, taking me somewhere else. And that's pretty much it, because I'm still thinking right now. But I would like to say I'm very appreciative for all the webinars that we have had the opportunity to be a part of, as well as just all the resources, including today's, which I find to be creative in nature for me. As a creative individual, you probably will hear that. You hear that a lot, you saying creativity. So again, thank you.
Well, thank you for sharing that knowledge. I'm sure I didn't know, and there may be others who did not know about the author that you're speaking. Okay, let me ask you a question. How do you plan on approaching this? What's going to be your major theme that you pursuing?
It's so interesting that you're asking me that, because this is my first semester as a PhD student. So the word theory, methodology, theory. I'm writing a paper right now about creativity and information science. So theory, I'm still thinking. I hope to have an answer, hopefully by December, as to how I want to approach the play itself. They're all Black characters. And the one thing that I can say that I thought was good for me, as far as like diagramming history, diagramming her sentences, diagramming just pretty much everything that she wrote in regards to this play, she sets the play up as in they're just in a place on the East Coast. So I think that is like a big premise to work with as it pertains to time and place.
Okay. Well, I did some work myself looking at time, place, and space. So I can appreciate your perspective right now, and the fact that you haven't zoned in on any particular way of approaching this yet. Exploring all your avenues. Who else might? Yes, sir?
Hello?
Yeah, can hear you now.
Yeah, this is Ron Bailey. I really enjoy hearing how you guys are working through what you're doing. And I had one comment, but now I have two. The last question, the last comment raises the issue of what is the theoretical framework we use to approach African American history, because it's an area of long-standing contention. And I'll share if I can figure out how to connect it to the Zoom call, I'll do it, but I'll probably end up sending it later. A discussion that we've developed that talks about what we call a paradigm of unity in Black studies. And it's a framework. That's the way I would say it in everyday parlance, but it really is a paradigm that tries to guide us to some of the major chunks of time, historical periods, as well as some of the variables that have shaped human experience over time. And I think that's useful for what you're trying to do, because in addition to being a practical tool, there's a pretty heavy duty theoretical discussion that goes along with the periodization of history, or the selection of variables that shape the human experience. And I really want to emphasize, for your point and for Tabitha's point, lived experience is most important. A lot of times people want to come at this in terms of tools. I think what's more important is you thinking about the lived experience you're trying to get to, or the lived experience that the author is working with. And as a result of that, then thinking about, well, what are the sources of information and what are the tools that might be used? And that struck me as Tabitha was talking, because redlining is an aspect of housing discrimination, right? And so what struck me as you were talking was two things. One, I lived in East Palo Alto, right across from Stanford, when I was a graduate student. And it was very interesting. There is actually a federal hearing about how Black people were treated, mainly ex-military people who had moved to the Bay Area to work in the defense industry, many from the South. After the war was over, they were seeking to use their funds to purchase housing outside of San Francisco. And there's this wonderful hearing sponsored by the federal government. I think I can get you the citation, but it shows how white real estate agents put leaflets in the Black community saying, we're taking a bus trip to East Palo Alto, to Palo Alto. Well, it's Menlo Park, that area where there's housing available. And they, publicized that in the Black community. They said that they would be providing lunch. On the peninsula in East Palo Alto and Palo Alto, they put out leaflets saying the Black people are coming, and they gave Black people chicken box lunches and encouraged them to throw the boxes out of the window. And what it did was to lower the value. I mean, it made white people anxious about this invasion. We still hear that language. And they sold property cheap that was then resold to Black people at a higher cost. And so if you look at housing discrimination, I'm also thinking about the Negro in Chicago that was done after World War I, the riots around World War I. There's a book called The Negro in Chicago, done by a commission that has some of that same discussion of what happened in cities in Chicago. So, and if you talk about illustrating this with the digital or interviews, there's just a lot, newspaper clippings and so on. So there is a lot of visual information, multimedia information that can be used to get at what you're talking about. And I think it's helpful to think about this framework that I'll send out to everybody that might be helpful.
Thank you so much, Dr. Bailey. So I'd like to hear from some others.
Okay, I'll go. Hello.
Hi.
Hi, I'm Jada Bradley, and now I'm thinking about Lovecraft Country because you're talking about Chicago and integration, but that's a whole nother story. My background is writing and research and metadata, and so I went to the database to kind of look to see what people were. I wanted to talk about the Great Migration, but you can't just write Great Migration in and think it's going to pop up. So I ended up looking for language about travel and what people in the novels had to say about traveling. And then I started looking at what men and women had to say about traveling. So I've been playing around. I don't have a clear thesis or anything yet, but I'm interested in Great Migration and travel, which probably does connect to redlining and some other things that have been discussed. So if anyone has any other ideas they want to share with me, I'm open to suggestion, but that's where I'm going.
I was wondering, did you have an opportunity to look at the Jones work that Kenton did on the Afro-PWW site?
I haven't. I'm writing it down though.
Take a look at that, and that might inspire you
Okay.
of ways to think about approaching that particular work. I didn't really ask anyone, but are there those of you who are interested in pursuing it more in terms of a quantitative kind of work? If you are, speak up. I'd like to hear what your project would be.
I'll insert something in here, Marilyn, because I put it in the chat for everybody. There's a new book by one of our partners. He's now no longer University of Chicago, but he did a book called Redlining Culture. It's by Richard Jean So, and it specifically uses, it's a narrative, but it also has, oh, sorry, I'm supposed to start my video? Okay. So sorry.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. So it does do the quantitative piece and the narrative piece.
Wonderful.
Richard Jean So, it's called Redlining Culture, and he obviously has borrowed the term from redlining, the historic use of the term, but he's applying it to the publishing industry and publications, Black and other publications after World War II. So he's making an interesting parallel between the two. So the book, I had to blurb the book, so it might be out already, but I can certainly ask Richard if I can share it with anybody who's interested, because it makes a very strong argument. It draws on actually the BBIP database, so that's why we're in it. And because we provided the titles for the Black authors that he included in his text. So just so you know that this is increasingly what is happening. Publishing is incorporating these quantitative approaches in the text. So Mississippi is doing that. Other people are doing that. This book comes out of Columbia University Press, which is one of the presses that has elected to use both visualizations as well as, you know, a narrative section.
Great. We have a few more minutes. I'd like to hear from some others.
I'd like to share. My name is Latanzia Evans, and I am a PhD student at the University of Memphis. And last semester, as well as this semester, I've been taking a Black women's autobiography course. And I'm interested in learning more about like Black liberation movements. And a couple of different stories that have made me think about these in different ways includes Ann Moody's Coming of Age in Mississippi, Elaine Brown, Taste of Power, and Assata Shakur's Assata. And like the idea of like, what does Black liberation movement mean? Because there have been different phases when you think about like Black Panthers, civil rights, Black Lives Matter, all of these different things. And so I guess for me, it's more so, I guess, getting data sets about these movements and what they mean and how it affects like everyday lived experience for African American women in particular.
Well, social movements and change was my emphasis in getting my PhD. And interesting enough, you mentioned Ann Moody. Mississippi was where I did my research for my dissertation. You're from Mississippi, did you say?
Yes, ma'am.
Where?
Have you ever heard of Rolling Fork by any chance?
That's one I haven't heard.
Me too.
Where is it located?
It's located between Greenville and Vicksburg. It's a small little town right near.
Okay.
Highway 1. If you blink, you'll pass it. It's super small.
Okay. Well, I was there in Mississippi for quite a little while. I got my bachelor's and my first master's degree from the University of Mississippi. And of course, as I said before, I met Dr. Bailey and Dr. Graham there.
I don't want to hog, but I got to say this because you just raised a very important question, the notion of creating data sets. This is actually the next phase of BPIP's work with HathiTrust. So the word data set is now, curating data sets. So you will actually have something to use to apply to your work. But you are right, currently we don't have what you need. So you have to be on the ground floor of trying to do that. But we are, Jade is on, and let me see, I don't know if Brenton is okay, we've got a couple of people in BPIP now who are going to be working on that project. So hopefully they will be bringing us an understanding of how to do more of those, curating these various data sets. So work sets, data sets are, sort of subsets of larger things, and they can be used with anything else you're doing. Well, we don't have a lot of those, to work with. So you can see how barren, in a sense, I don't want to leave it there, the potential of this field, because we do need more resources that other people can use. So you're creating something that other people can use. So you have to go to the books now and pull all that stuff, as opposed to somebody having done that and giving you resources, multiple resources that you can then apply to your work. So you've got double work to do, is what I have to say about it.
Well, I have to say that definitely, was that someone else speaking just then?
I was going to ask her if she had read One Crazy Summer by Rita Williams Garcia.
Yeah.
Not yet. She gave us a long list and so many books, and so I've just been trying to read a lot of things that she gave us, but I have not, and I will add it to my list.
Well, I'm from children's. I came from children's book. That's a children's book, so it's not like it doesn't take that long. But there's girls and their mother and involvement with the Black Panthers in 1968. That's why I mentioned it.
And part of this is again, part of it, am I unmuted?
Yes.
So part of what's exciting about this is that there is a large body of literature that hasn't been subjected to the kind of discussion we're having. So there are books like that talk about the rural experience and the migration to the urban. There's Deep South by Davis. And then there's Black Metropolis by Drake and Caton on Chicago. And there's the migration in between. And part of the challenge is kind of working with those bodies of material that are there. I just mentioned the Negro in Chicago, where you had people looking at the 1919 riots, but you had delegations from Mississippi coming up to Chicago to try to figure out how they could convince Black workers not to leave Chicago, not to leave Mississippi and come to Chicago. So there's a lot of dynamics in African-American history that are often there in a novel form, in statistical form. If you look at Gerna Murdahl, the American Dilemma, so there's a lot, and there's a lot of raw material there, but oftentimes it's not informed by a paradigm. And so part of this thing I'll send you was our attempts to say the Black experience is going through these alternating periods of cohesion and disruption, from Africa disrupted by the slave trade to the South, the disruption, migration to the North, broadly speaking. And that becomes kind of a frame of reference we can use to figure out all the material that's out there that fits in these periods, but haven't been interrogated in that regard. So again, I'll share something that might be useful in your continuing to explore this.
We really appreciate that, Dr. Bailey. We've got about 6 minutes left. I would like to hear more.
I'll go because I have a class in 6 minutes.
Oh my goodness.
Okay. So I came to the project with like a ton of ideas. I mean, I wrote it in my thing. It was just like moving through Wonderland because it was just so much there, and I have so many different interests. But along the way, I met Dr. Sarita Williams, who's a former BBIP scholar, and so I'm actually going to carry on her project and kind of continue her Afro-futurist keyword search across the books that are there. And I'm thinking, because there's a credo, I I think, I don't forget who the publisher or the company is, but Credo online reference, e-reference database has a mind map that, so when you type in a word like racism, all the related words and like the 6 degrees of separation appear with that word. And so you can link off to other events. And so I'm thinking of something like that with the keywords, because some keywords, they've already had some, you know, some words appear like 600 times, some 2. And so just to kind of show the degrees, and so that if you click a number, it shifts, because that's what happens in that mind map. So I was looking at, you know, these different platforms that you've presented. And I want to also thank you for your presentation last fall. I saw you in Gainesville at that 2-day conference.
Yeah.
So I've been thinking about your presentation from there and what you did today, and I'm gonna figure out how to use, because I want to use something more visually appealing other than just boxes of numbers and text. Because I know, you know, people like things that move or sound or something just to kind of get their attention. So that's kind of where I am right now.
Okay. I think that Dr. Ramsby is a person that you could have a conversation with in terms of putting those the visual and the box, as you refer to them, data things together in order to present a more exciting piece.
Yes, and I do plan to reach out to him. So, you know, just in case he sees my name, West White Clarissa, he'll know why I'm bothering him.
Okay, well, remember I said this is about establishing relationships. So I'm hoping that we are getting that going here as we talk to each other. Is there anyone else left that would like to say something before we sort of close out?
Yeah, I'm looking at, this is Georgine Best Montgomery, and after going through the books that were available, I was really fascinated and was surprised to learn that Gil Scott-Heron had written novels. I'd always been a fan of his spoken word, so I'm really interested in reading those two, and I've begun reading The Vulture, looking at those 2 books and writing a paper on what I find. I'm not sure what I'm going to find since I haven't read them both yet, but that's where I'm interested in, and seeing how that plays against his spoken word, if it does at all.
Well, that is certainly an interesting project that you're saying. It was going to be our next issue, special issue of Fire, had we not had a slight pause take place, and it wasn't because of COVID, in our production. So I would take this last couple of minutes here just to say that that idea that we had about using media and digital materials to better explore the Black experience was an idea, perhaps when it started a little more than 10 years ago, might have been past its time or before its time, I should say. But we ended up in our last few years getting a lot of people interested. And this is just at the time when, unfortunately, JSTOR and Fire have parted ways. And we, Dr. Bailey, Dr. Graham, other members of the Fire board are looking for ways to continue Fire beyond the JSTOR platform. But what we need are also young people who are interested in doing short form publications. For example, the paper that you are interested in doing for BBIP, there may be a version of that you could use to just test out how you would be using digital materials, etc., to do a publication. So I'm interested and you get in touch with me, saying I have an idea I want to test out, and let's see if we can start to pull together a special issue of FIRE coming out of BBIP that will allow you the opportunity to think further about how you can use the digital.
Okay. That sounds good to me.
So Marilyn and all of cohort 1, I see you here. Cohort 2, thank you for being here. And BPIP team, HBW BPIP team, thank you for being here. I want to say thank you for allowing me to finish one live stream event and get over here. So you gave me time to actually catch everything. So this is the beginning for some people. It's a continuation for others. I want to remind everybody that we do have that search engine called PhiloLogic. So maybe we need to go back to that webinar, and Hoyt is available to answer questions. But whenever you talk about searching, doing word searches and not knowing the words you're searching for, PhiloLogic can help you. So remember, it is there in one of the webinars. But again, Marilyn, thank you so much. I know you're going to get lots of traffic. And Ron, thanks for joining us. And those of you still thinking, I know you, if you didn't even say anything, I know you're thinking about a lot. And so we want to keep this conversation going. And I think, I don't think we have another workshop or webinar planned, but shoot Sarah an email if you feel the need for one. We can do that. So we want to meet you where you are and provide you with the support that you can. And this is a part of our extended network. Afro-PWW is part of our extended network. And so whoever gets money first, them or us, we'll keep moving things along. So thank you for everybody for joining us.
I forgot to mention, Mariam, I'm sorry. I forgot to mention that they will continue to have access to that.
Press books?
They'll continue to have access to our sandbox.
Good, good.
For at least a month. Mary, who's here? Who's still here? Mary, are you here?
Yeah, I'm here too.
Okay. So can you provide them at least a month of access?
Oh yeah, I don't really see of a reason why I would delete them. There are a couple people where you know, WordPress is a little bit strange sometimes about what it lets me do if it has already sent out a registration email and it got lost somehow. So I have found a workaround. So for those 2 or 3 people who weren't able to log into Pressbooks, I'm going to fix it for you here in just a minute, and I'll send you an email about that.
Okay. So thank you again for having me, and I trust that I'll get a chance to hear from you again soon.
Have a good weekend, everybody.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.